Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kaylee, and we're going to talk about the books I read in February. The first book that I read was called When the Tides Held the Moon by Vanessa Vida Kelly. This story follows a Puerto Rican American blacksmith who has been recruited to create a giant fish tank. He doesn't know why it was made. All he knows is he was earning a really big commission for it, and so he decided to take on the job and give it a try. The switch in the story comes when the person who requested that fish tank to be built comes by to pick it up. He offers to hire our main character to come with him to the circus so that he can continue to maintain this fish tank. It's a really large tank. It's going to need some upkeep and it's going to need some repairs every now and then. And he wants to have someone on hand that can help with that. He's also offering to pay him a lot of money. And so, of course, our main character decides to come with him. However, one thing the main character did not expect was for this fish tank to be used to hold a real life mermaid. And this story is a queer romance involving this blacksmith and this captured merman. This was such a beautiful novel. It really captured the immigrant experience and told it in a really interesting way, not only through the main character's perspective, but also through the merman's perspective, being thrust into a society and into a culture that you don't know. My favorite quote from the book was, I'd lost track of all the times I had melted myself down just to recast myself as someone with a slightly better shot at belonging someplace. So, our main character is feeling like he has to reinvent himself every time he is in a new situation, meeting new people, and is basically experiencing cultural masking. While I enjoyed this book, it felt like it could have been a little bit shorter. It felt like there was some filler that didn't necessarily need to be there, and it kind of took away from the story and kind of made me feel a little bit bored at times. However, I would highly recommend this book if you are interested in a queer romance. I would also suggest that you read the author's note at the end of the novel. She goes into the research that she conducted in order to make this a realistic and accurate portrayal of the Puerto Rican experience in this time period. Our next book of the month was a buddy read that I did with my sister, and that was Howl's Moving Castle by Diane Wynne Jones. This was created into the Studio Ghibli movie that we all know and love today, and I had not seen it before. I had seen My Neighbor Totoro and I had seen Spirited Away, but I had not seen Howl's Moving Castle. So we came up with the idea to buddy read it and then watch the movie together after we finished. Now, I hate to say it, but I kind of liked the movie better than the book. I felt like the movie expanded upon some plot holes that were present in the novel, and it made the characters more lovable, and it made me want to root for them a little bit more than in the novel. I unfortunately kind of found myself falling into a reading slump with this book, and I don't know if it was necessarily the book's fault. I kind of felt like I was reading it to finish it rather than reading it to enjoy it, if that makes sense. I was looking forward to getting to the end so I could move on to the next thing. Some scenes or sequences were described too vaguely or with too much detail, and it created a pacing issue where it kind of felt like it would move really quick at one moment and then the next moment it's really slow, and it kind of took me out of the story a little bit, and there were a lot of weirdly phrased sentences and weirdly phrased like paragraphs that kind of took me out of the immersion and made me feel like I was reading, if that makes sense. And I was not a fan of the romance in this book when I was reading the novel, but then absolutely fell in love with the characters getting together in the movie. So I don't know if it was because the movie characters were more lovable to me or if I felt more connected with them than I did with the characters in the novel, but overall, if you're interested, if you like Howl's Moving Castle, I would suggest giving it a read to see the original content and the original media form. But otherwise, it was all right. It was okay. The next book in our list is one for my book club, and they suggested one that I was really excited to read and had been waiting for an excuse to start, and that is Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman. I'm specifically reading the audiobooks solely with the narrator of Jeff Hayes. He is fantastic. So I was gifted the entire series by a friend, and so I started listening to book one this month, and now I'm currently on book 5, and I have book club tonight, so we'll see how much I get through it before the end. But we were only tasked with reading the first book, so This story follows a man named Carl and his ex-girlfriend's cat, Princess Donut. They're on Earth, set in the present day, and Earth has been taken over in an alien invasion to mine our Earth's resources. As part of this alien invasion, humans have been put into dungeons and they have to get through 18 floors of the dungeon in order to win back their planet. So Carl and Donut decide to enter the dungeon in an attempt to survive and to win back ownership of their planet Earth. I think this book is hilarious. There are some moments that are a little bit raunchy and go a little bit over the top, but overall, I feel like Matt Dinniman does a really good job of meshing together the seriousness and the humanity of an apocalyptic situation and also making it hilarious and hysterical. My favorite character is Princess Donut, the cat. She is so hilarious, very snooty, very much lives up to the title of princess. But watching her character grow throughout the novels and throughout the series has been so much fun. And she's just such a great character that is relatable but also extremely over the top and really outrageous. Now, keep in mind that this series has short books towards the beginning of the series, and the books start to get longer as you go. So, for example, the audiobook for the fifth novel is 24 hours in length. And I believe the next novel that I'm going to read, the sixth book, is 26 hours. So, they do get pretty lengthy towards the end. So, if you're not someone that likes a long story and likes a long, drawn out adventure, this probably wouldn't be for you. And since I read a lot of the Dungeon Crawler Carl books in this month, I did end up reading like 10 books, but like half of them were the Dungeon Crawler Carl books. So I don't necessarily want to talk about the later books in case you're wanting to read the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I don't want to spoil anything. Um, but so far in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, the current book that I'm reading, book 5, is my favorite so far. Of the ones that I have completed, book 4 is my favorite. Book 1 was probably my lowest rated book out of all of them. So if you read book 1 and you're like, "Oh, that was all right. That was pretty cool. I like the characters." Keep going because book 1 just kind of sets the foundation and then all the other books after that really jump into the action and jump into the story and it gets really really cool. So interspersed between me reading the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, I also was picking up a couple of other standalone novels, and one of those standalone novels was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I loved The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I was really excited to read another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. So I was really excited when my book club chose this one to read. This novel takes place in the 1980s and it follows two female scientists who are wanting to become astronauts. And it is a beautiful, beautiful love story, not only a romantic love story, but a love story about family. And it tells the story of these women's struggle to get to their dream, to achieve their dream of becoming an astronaut in a very male dominated field. They are one of the first female astronauts to ever get to go to space. The story is jumping back and forth between the mission that they are currently on and back at the very beginning of their academic experience. So there is an emergency situation going on in the present day, and we're jumping back and forth between that emergency situation that is happening and their past as colleagues and their story of how they fell in love as they went through this astronaut academy. I prefer to read books about queer joy because I think we have a lot of novels and a lot of media about how hard it is to be queer and how difficult it was for queer people in and still is to receive respect and to be accepted in society. So I tend to want to read books that celebrate queerness and don't necessarily delve super deep into the, oh, it's so sad, it's so upsetting, it's so hard to be queer. But this book, even though it had some themes of homophobia throughout, and it was kind of a difficult read in some spots just because of the things the characters were experiencing, it ends on a really, really hopeful note. And I would highly suggest giving this a try. This was my first 5-star read of the month of February, and I loved it so much that I went out and bought my own copy of The Atmosphere after I read my library's copy. My favorite quote was, "Well, we are the stars," Joan said, "and the stars are us. Every atom in our bodies was once out there, was once a part of them. To look at the night sky is to look at parts of who you once were, who you may one day be. A book has not made me cry like this in so long. I literally had to have my partner come and console me when I was in the last like 10% of this book. The next novel I read in the month of February was called Less by Andrew Sean Greer. This is for the Leve Book Club. So if you're in the Leve Book Club, hi. This was a novel that follows a middle aged man who is trying to find his sense of purpose by traveling throughout the world. He is an author who is mildly successful. He's not all star successful, but he's definitely not a struggling author either. And he's been invited to a bunch of these conferences and interviews and events throughout the globe. And he had been putting them off, not wanting to do them. However, when he is broken up with by his boyfriend of many years, he decides that he wants to experience more of life. So he decides that he wants to go out on these adventures to kind of help him with his writer's block, as well as to just experience some new things that he hasn't experienced before. He's starting to realize that life is coming to an end soon, and he doesn't have an unlimited amount of time on earth, and he needs to live life to the fullest. Each chapter of this book takes place in a different country, and Les is struggling with a different memory or a different traumatic event in every single one of these countries. The writing was fantastic. The metaphors and the imagery was just so fantastic and so amazing. I really, really loved the writing style. It kept me engaged throughout the novel, and I just felt like Andrew is a very strong writer throughout this novel. Maybe it's because I'm not a middle aged man, but I had a hard time really caring about Les's character. I know that sounds really bad, but a lot of his struggles that he's experiencing are just white man struggles. And not to dismiss white man struggles, like struggles are still struggles, but the stakes weren't very high. But I was not able to go to the Leve Book Club meeting for this novel. I was at a bridal shower for one of my friends. But I did read some of the feedback that people had shared in their reviews, and audience members who were a little bit older and maybe had a little bit more life experience and were able to relate to Les a little bit more tended to enjoy the novel a lot more than the younger readers. So it is very possible that this is just a me thing. I'm just young and I don't really care about getting old. um, so who knows? I don't know. The final book that I finished in February was Lightlark by Alex Astor. This was another buddy read that I did with my sister. She has been picking random books off of her TBR, and she will double check with me and be like, hey, do you also have that on your TBR? And I'll either be like, yeah, let's read it together, or I'll be like, no, I don't. Have fun with that, queen. So this was one that we did have in common, and I know it's a series, but I think I might just read the first book. I liked it, but I have a lot of other novels that I'm excited about reading, so it's very possible that I'll take a break from the series for a bit and then come back to it when I feel like I want to. So Lightlark follows the story of a girl named Isla, and she is a powerless wildling in this fantastical world. There's a curse upon every single realm, and it causes some horrible things to happen to each part of the realm. So for example, wildlings, when they fall in love with someone, they have to kill that person, and starlings can only live to be 25 years old. So every single realm has their own issue and their own curse, and the centennial comes around every 100 years in an attempt to break that curse. So Isla is in the centennial. She's participating to try and help her realm, but she's trying to hide the fact that she is powerless. This was a really cool romance story. There were moments at the beginning that felt really YA and felt really cheesy and predictable. And I was honestly going to give this a pretty low rating when I was in the first 50%. It just felt like any other YA fantasy book that I had read. It has like the mysterious dark character and then the good character that she's kind of deciding, oh, should I be with the good guy or the bad guy? Oh, I don't know. And it just kind of felt like, okay, I've read this before, I fear. However, Alex Astor pulls something in the last 25% that makes you realize that they were playing into those tropes on purpose to kind of lead you astray. And I'm not going to say anything else. All I'll say is I originally was going to rate it like 2 stars, and then I ended up rating it like a 4 after the 25% mark. So I would highly suggest giving this one a try. I'm probably going to come back to the series at some point, but I'm probably not going to read it anytime soon just because I have other books that I'm wanting to continue right now. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And I hope you found a book that you might be interested in picking up next month. My goal is to have a March reading wrap up coming up soon. I have some books that I'm currently reading that I'm really excited to finish and share with you. And I will see you in the next video.